Okay, so I'm going to share my screen with you first, and you will have noticed that I posted 2 files in the chat. So if you open your chat box, can you still see the files that I posted there?
Yes, I can still see them.
Yes, you can. Okay, good, because it's gone on mine because I left and came back. So one is the PowerPoint, for whatever reason that you might want to keep it. The other is basically a handout version of the PowerPoint, because there's a couple of steps in here that may be worth to hold on and print out for you as sort of a guide on how to advance in your career searches. And then the last link that I posted for you is the survey at the end of this workshop, so you can let us know how you like it, what we can do better in the future. So as you know, this is the, there you go. As you know, this is the second of 2 workshops. Who here attended the first one?
I did.
I did too.
Okay, all right. Okay, so you are more or less in the know of the concept that I'm sharing with you here. I'm going to first still introduce myself. I'm going to recap quickly why HSS degrees are so special. And then we are going to, I'm going to give you a guide on how to begin your own search. And since it's only the 3 of you, there's no need for breakout rooms. So at the end, what we'll do is actually you'll all do the research that I'm suggesting here, and then we can talk about it as we are on Zoom. Okay, so that you have some guidance, because in the end, at the end of this workshop, I want you to actually walk away with some specific, not clear career paths necessarily, that can take more time, but at least some cues and hints as to where to turn, and some hopeful prospects of what might be your future. Okay, so in case you missed the first part, which you haven't, of course, so this is for those who watch this in recording. There is the existing recording of the previous event. No, we're not going to watch that right now. And to introduce myself, you know me, of course, but for those who are watching the recording, my name is Professor Volker Janssen. I'm a professor of history. I have been here since 2005, so 16 years. And it would seem that my career is pretty much obvious, and therefore it would appear that I'm not one to talk much about concern on how to find a career. But I came to this job relatively late. When I started my job, I was already 33 years old, which in retrospect is very young, but at the time it seemed like one of the older entries to the job. I only started college at age 25, and that is not because I had no idea what to do with my life. I had all sorts of ideas what to do with my life, but I pursued all different kinds of avenues. Part of that has inspired me to think about the way that you guys look for your careers, and encourage students like yourselves and others to be a little bolder and more creative in their searches. Now, I had a couple of advantages, of course, coming from a stable middle-class household in Germany. I nonetheless wanted to do something that was less secure and predictable, and so I went overseas after my national service. So I worked in London at a very lowly office job for a year, and got an opportunity as a result of that job to work overseas. So I spent a year in Belize in Central America, overseeing a hospital installation project for which I had no qualifications, but the experience of the previous job. After that, I decided to return to my original idea of becoming a journalist, and spent a year in New York City working for a small German language American newspaper. That was a shoestring operation, and severely underfunded, underpaid. And whatever I had saved in the previous job, I spent there in New York for a year. That's when I returned to college in Germany. I spent 3 years at Hamburg University, basically the whole time preparing for a fellowship that would get me back to the United States. And that's what happened in '99. I took that Fulbright fellowship and made it to UC San Diego, where I then originally wanted to just do a master's degree and then go back to journalism. But then the internet revolution took place and journalism changed dramatically. So I decided to not go back to radio work, which I had done before, and then pursue my PhD. And then I got this job, but not with the certainty that you may think. I applied for 23 tenure track positions. I got 4 initial interviews, 2 campus visits, and 1 job offer. Now, this doesn't mean that Fullerton was a bottom choice for me. It was actually one of the places that after going there on campus, I was most interested in. But nonetheless, in the end, this job came not entirely by happenstance, but sort of more in a roundabout way. And I'm perfectly fine with that. There is no clear straight line in my career path, and I think it's been all the better for it. And that's one thing that I want to convey to you as well as students in HSS. Unlike, say, someone in a nursing program or in a management program here on campus, or in engineering, your career choices are wide and far-reaching, and it's much harder to pick what's actually right for you. But that's also a good thing, because in many ways, the Humanities and Social Sciences College, more than any other college, focuses on lifetime learning, so on a lifetime building of skills and competencies. And anyone who's really happy in their job is primarily happy in their job because they keep learning things. So the idea that somehow we complete our education, our BA, our MA, then find the job that we were exactly trained for, and then pursue that and execute that job, fulfill that function like a cog in a machine for the next 40 years. It's not realistic. This does not happen. It happened for a brief time in the mid-20th century. That's history. You don't need to worry about that. But that's not really your future any longer. A job in the same position for 40 years. And second, and that's maybe more important, it's not at all desirable. Why would you want to finish your education at, I don't know how old you are, but let's say you are between 23 and 27. Sometimes we are older, and maybe we're 40, but you don't want to then continue to do one job for the rest of your life. That's not really the plan. Or rather, it's not really satisfactory. HSS graduates have a more interesting, maybe more complicated, but more interesting future ahead, in that their jobs and their specializations will change and grow. Jobs will change and specializations will grow. And that's what really is exciting about our college and makes us ultimately in lifetime earnings highly competitive. Even though it may seem at first sight that someone with a history MA or a philosophy degree or someone else from our different colleges stands a poorer chance at making a good living than someone in Mihailo College or in engineering, in the lifetime overall calculation, that doesn't pan out. That's not true. So we do just as well and better than a good number of colleges. So with that in mind, it's important to embrace a couple of career search rules. They are not universally embraced, and they should be embraced more in our college than in others. But it's important to say there's no shame in searching. And by searching, I don't just mean searching job sites, but also searching for what you actually want to do, what really fascinates you. You need to speak it out loud, and you need to talk about it with others. So talk to peers who are in the same boat and make that a team effort. Keep that a topic of conversation where you want to go with it. Often students who are most worried about what to do after their MA actually don't talk about it and are eager to avoid the subject because it's so uncomfortable. I have to be honest, I did that in part when I was in my PhD program, and I knew that that was really putting me on track for a tenure track position. I did not research how much professors were earning. And when I found out what some of my my friends that were getting jobs were getting offered in pay, I was horrified. I thought this is the worst decision I've ever made in my life. because I didn't inform myself. Now, it didn't turn out that poorly, and I'm fine, of course. But the lesson here is, do not stick your head in the sand. Look, you are here, so clearly you are not sticking your head in the sand, right? The other 13 people who signed up but not showing up are maybe more guilty of that. But you are clearly looking out and are willing to embrace the fact that this is an effort. So be deliberate about it. The other thing is to distinguish between jobs and careers. Jobs, you should really think of as building blocks for your careers. So when you go out looking for career opportunities, they don't always present themselves in that fashion. So they may form a there may be a job offering at a fairly low salary, with fairly modest task requirements, but it's at an exciting site at the United Nations, for instance, or at the headquarters of a think tank or nonprofit organization in Washington, D.C. It doesn't ask you for much. It does not really require MA, but it's in a place where you would like to be, and that makes it a building block. In retrospect, I think one of the things I did right in my career path was that I looked at opportunities as building blocks and what they could teach me. I went to London, England, after my national service in Germany because I wanted to speak English like a native. And hold on one second here. I'm having some Bluetooth interference. I went to Central America because I thought this was an opportunity for me to learn independent work, find myself challenged in an alien environment, and learn organizational skills. All of that happened. So I always looked for the things that I could learn at these jobs, and that's not to praise myself here. This turns out to be right in retrospect, and that's the way you should look at your job opportunities. What can you learn from these posts? What can you take away from them and build further? And then finally, your career is yours alone. So do not compare or compete with peers. Now, for individual jobs, of course, you compete. So there you need to be aware of what other people are bringing to the table. But your career path, that is your choice. And we often find ourselves trapped with the idea that, well, I have this friend who graduated and they got a tenure track position, and that's a real measure of success. I need to do that too. I need to reach that same point of success. That's not true. You pick your own path, and you need to stay, I don't want to sound like a Disney movie here, but you need to stay true to that path, and you need to embrace and determine what are your priorities and then follow those and not get distracted by what might be considered more prestigious career tracks or what might be more financially rewarding. In the end, none of us picked our major, our MA, because we're in it for the money. Now, we need to make money, of course, we want to make a living. But we're not really bent on getting rich here, by which I mean, owning several houses and all that. We want stability, security, the opportunity maybe to build something for our children to have once we get old. Those are fairly normal middle class ambitions, and that's fair, and that's something that's completely attainable in a wide range of career paths. But that happens often without really focusing or being too preoccupied with where is the money. And that will often happen more incidentally than on purpose. And I know this may come across as sort of a white male privileged opinion that, oh, don't worry about money. I'm not saying just do any job and you don't need to worry about getting paid. Of course, you want to get paid, and it's important that you're able to support yourself. But you should not pick a job that pays well and teaches you nothing in a place where you don't want to be, and forego a job that pays you modestly, where you may have to sort of live with more modest means, but that gives you opportunities that in a year or two will really pay off handsomely. That's what I'm saying. I also recognize, of course, that for those of you who have family to support, let's say you have children, or you have a partner, or you have elders, parents, and others to take care of, that of course changes your priorities. And then you have to create a new balance between how you can learn on your jobs and how you can make enough money at these jobs. So this is something you want to lay out, though. The more important part is you need to be deliberate about that too. So you need to identify, okay, am I mostly accountable initially to take care of myself, so that my pay covers what I need, or do I need to also make sure that I cover enough to take care of my children, parents? That's something you need to put on top of the list. What has to happen financially, and that is an individual decision that changes for everybody. So I just want to make sure that that's clear, that I'm not talking with an assumption that we all aloof, prosperous children of middle-class families that don't have to worry about money. That's not the case, I know. So with that, let's move forward. How do you find the resources that help you identify interesting jobs that are building blocks for your career path? The first step you should always turn to are your department's career resources. Chances are your professors, your faculty have already thought about this at some point and put some effort into that search. And they may have some things out there on their department website, maybe on their individual website. And you need to make sure that you find them. Departments are not always very good at putting that front and center. Some are better than others. So the first step is always go to your department and see what kind of resources do they offer. And that's something, once I'm done with my little spiel here, you will all do this individually. Second, what are the main professional organizations that are associated with your program or degree? So for Drizel, who is in history, I know it's the Organization of American Historians and the American Historical Association. There are other smaller organizations as well, but they are mostly more focused on the academic side. Now, every academic discipline has a professional organization like this, and they are mostly concerned with sustaining their membership and attracting new professionals. They believe in what they do. Historians believe that historians are good for this world, and I agree with them. But then they need to find a way to attract new members to the profession, make them practice history, make them get their PhDs, and then tell them what's their future with that PhD or that MA. And so these organizations have a strong interest, a strong motivation in showing new members to that profession where their futures lie. Because if you don't take care of that, then who will, pick a psychology degree or a political science degree in the future if none of the established professionals tell them what they can do with it? So these organizations are important to research, identify, have bookmarked, and look up on occasion for career advice and resources. The other thing is important, and this is something that I'm sure happens rarely, is that you should know what your graduate program student learning outcomes are. So you're supposed to be good at something specific to your discipline, right? You're not just, other colleges tend to put us all in one lump and say, oh, these are the soft skills, being able to talk about race without offending people, or being able to understand gender enough to not come across as a complete misogynistic jerk. Those are, of course, good skills to have. It should not require a humanities and social science degree to pull that off. And our communication skills, yes, they're good, but we have a communications college. So if we are just all about writing well, then we seem to be a little bloated as a college. It may not have much merit as a college per se. So what is it about your particular degree, your program, that makes you good at something? Right? That's something that you need to be clear about. And you need to be clear about that for your own purposes, but also because people will ask you. So a history MA, or Alicia, what's your major, or what's your program?
Theater, lighting,
Theater,
design,
right?
technical theater.
So I continue to talk about humanities and social sciences, although apparently this program has been promoted to everybody. Jorge, what is your program?
Education.
Okay, all right. So you were all there last time. So forgive me for still talking to the HSS crowd. Okay. You have a particular set of skills and a particular body of knowledge that you need to walk away with your graduation. So you need to be specific about this and need to be able to articulate this to anyone who is looking to hire. And I will continue to talk mostly to HSS folks here. You will apply for jobs that don't specifically ask for, say, a history degree. Or with Alicia, I think this may also be true. They may not specifically be looking for a theater degree. And Jorge, there are many career opportunities where they may not actually ask for an education degree. It could be one, but they may also be looking at Drizel for the same position, or Alicia. So what you need to do is be able to articulate why your program makes you good at what you do. What is it specifically that you can bring to the table? And you should practice that in a form of an elevator pitch, first generically, and then maybe later for specific jobs, where within less than a minute, you can say what makes you this special professional. Now, then you need to personalize this a little bit and think about what your strengths are under these learning outcomes. Which of these are most important to you? Is it the communicative part? Is it the skills methodology part? Or is it the body of knowledge, what you are learning about your subject? Learning your knowledge means that you want to identify your primary research interest and specialty. So let's say if Drizel is primarily interested in modern American history, finding a job where she is maybe primarily supposed to draw on knowledge of, I don't know, pre-modern Asia. Let's say she is a support staff for an archaeology office, or she works, say, in Hollywood for documentary filmmakers, and they primarily focus on world history topics for the A&E channel, say. Then modern American history is going to be a bent. But then, of course, if you're in the documentary field, then American history always works out well. So you need to be clear about what your specialties are. And Jorge, this may be, is it adult education or special education? Is it educational administration, or is it the K through 12? This is something that you need to be clear about. Alicia, I would say more about your field, theater, but I know so little that I'm just going to not offer examples that embarrass me. Okay. The other thing then is to think about how far you can connect these with your personal interests. And again, this works better for me with history and HSS than maybe with your education and theater programs. If your own personal interest in history tends to be sports, then you have a wide range of opportunities of working in commercial or non-governmental or government-related activities that are connected to sports, where you bring a body of expertise to the table. This is also true, let's say, for education. If you are really specialized in, say, special ed or educational administration, there are government agencies, government bodies, NGOs, and commercial enterprises all committed to either regulating, promoting, reforming, or in terms of commercial activities, selling to the educational sector. So this is something where you want to, in your own notes, write this down. So do you have a separate passion outside of your study that you can somehow link to that? Because generally you're always happier to work with something that interests you personally. That is for now the body, that was for the body of knowledge. The same is true for methodology. So what is the methodology of a theater program graduate? I do not know. Alicia, you probably will. maybe after you go through these steps, you will be clearer about it. So how does someone with a theater degree approach a challenge in, let's see, try to be creative here and think of a workplace scenario, maybe the organization of events, or how to organize demonstrations if you want to work in an NGO that tries to push and promote particular causes. Maybe there's something you bring to the table from theater that's particularly useful. I mean, I'm thinking of some Greenpeace public stunts from back in the 80s, where I thought that was good theater. It was good theater, and I'm not putting the cause down for it. It was good theater, and substantive at that. The same is true for you, Jorge, in education. There are methods to your discipline, not just a body of knowledge. And I think I elaborated on this last time, that we are not, as students, just vessels to be filled with information that we then walk out of the college with and then sort of drip by drip parse out the people. Now, some people work that way, and they tend to be rather annoying because they just always just share stuff they know. And that's not really the same as applying methods, ways of thinking, ways of researching that are unique to their discipline. That's much more useful. Then finally, another skill that you are learning that's specific to your program is a communicative element. It's very specific in theater, clearly, because your form of communication is other than writing. I'm hoping I'm getting this right vaguely. But even for Giselle, it's not just that she's a good writer. She writes differently than a political scientist. She writes differently than a sociologist or a philosopher. So there is an ability to form a story out of something that otherwise may not appear as a story. That's an historian skill. We create narratives, and narratives are incredibly important in business and government in any way. So your particular communicative skill is unique to your program. Others may claim a similar ability, but yours is specifically tailored to the formation of narrative structure of a storyline that has a beginning and an end. That may sound trite, but it's actually not trite if you say, look at a business challenge or at a government challenge, a policy challenge. Now, finally, you want to start doing some research. One good thing to do is to research your department's alumni. And you may wonder how you can research your department's alumni. And when we stop this and we turn to your individual work here, we can talk about this. You also want to research job search engines. So research the engines that later allow you to research. They are particular to your interest, and they are special and right for you. The broader ones, for instance, are higher ed jobs. This is not just jobs as for tenure track or teaching positions. There are also educational administrative jobs. Jorge, higher ed jobs is definitely a site for you if you don't have it listed yet. Digital Humanities Now is a creative site that finds jobs in digital humanities, where I could see Alicia actually play a role in finding ways to bring theater skills to digital humanities. USAjobs.gov is, of course, about government jobs. And I will say with confidence that education and history graduates always have a job in government anywhere. And reasonably also people with a theater degree. I know for a fact, having had a recruiter in a webinar a couple of years ago from the federal government, that a historian works in every individual department and agency. At least one historian is in every agency, department, and subdivision of the federal government. So they are everywhere. And the same may be true for education. And I would like to say the same about theater, but I'm more careful there because that may be overselling it. Then lastly, what you should do is have I wouldn't say social media presence, but a social networking presence. LinkedIn is not so much social media to me, since yes, you can post things and share things, but ultimately it's about making connections. That's something that LinkedIn focuses on for professional purposes more so than, say, Facebook. I've never been a Facebook account holder, so I'm hypothesizing here. And God knows, certainly more than Twitter or TikTok or whatever else social media has to offer. So a professional LinkedIn account would be one important step to find people and then be able to be found by others. So those are the steps that you should work through in your search for jobs. And what I want to do now is, because I've spoken for about 30 minutes, I'm going to close this this presentation, and I would actually like you all to have your cameras on, if that's possible, if that's not intruding, and then have you go through those steps. You have the handout in the chat. Download that, and you can use this as a guide and go through it step by step. Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
Okay, good. So I will be here. I'll be watching you right now. Without cameras, I can only watch your names. And then I will listen to your questions or discoveries. If you say, hey, I found this, and then your mics can all be open, because it's just the four of us in a room. And I would like you to start looking at these things. So to bring up maybe I should share the screen one more time so you can see where I want you to get started. A little bummed that virtually no one showed up who signed up for the event, because that would have been a nice group conversation. That's sort of what I was hoping for. So the first step is to find your department's career resources. Alicia, yes, your hands up.
So I tried to, I have the PowerPoint open, but I tried to open the handout, the PDF, but it says that my computer can't open it because it might be damaged or something.
Okay, well, I can certainly try to post it again.
Okay, but I have the PowerPoint open.
Okay, so if that's all you have, that's still something. Let me post that again now, okay?
Okay.
Okay, I posted it again. Did that work for you, Alicia?
Yes, it did. It
Okay,
opened.
all right, good.
Thank you.
Okay, no problem. I'm concluding from the fact that I only see your names that three of you all assume that on Saturday morning you then have to be visible, which is fine. I don't need to see you, but have your mic open so you can talk freely when something comes up. Drizella.
So for me, I did go to the history page, like our website, and they do have a lot of information on like potential jobs. It's like careers in libraries, archives, in museums, nonprofits and outreach, higher education administration, media and film, tourism, hospitality, which I was not expecting.
Yes.
Federal government, and publishing and editing, public history and teaching. So like you said, it's a wide net here.
Yes, actually, all those are webinars that I conducted a couple of years ago with recruiters and alumni. But you never saw this before, did you?
No, I hadn't seen it, and
Yeah.
I know that in that same page they have a really neat like best practices for your resume and interview. So I'll definitely be using those.
Yes, and knowing that you are certainly one of the more interested students when it comes to career, the fact that you just find this now, find that this is so new to you, that's a bummer. I have
I think I had seen one, but I don't know how I accessed it because I did not access it through this page.
Yeah. So yeah, over the years, these are my products here. They don't get the attention that they deserve because most students, I think, don't think to look, and that's the point here. You need to think to look. Now, Jose and Alicia, did you find anything for your departments?
Yes. So we have a Fullerton lighting website. We also have one for like scenic design, like all the little technical departments that we have in theater. And on the Fullerton lighting website, there's ones for Playbill, USITT, which is United States Institute of Technology, Disney, Dance USA, Theater for Young Audiences, League of Resident Theaters, American Association of Community Theaters, Southeastern Theater Conference, Offstage Jobs. There's plenty. Oh, I can't hear you. You're on mute.
No, sorry. I was quietly managing my son on the side. I apologize.
Okay.
So that means your department has thought about it quite a lot. And the question is, did you see this before?
Yes.
Oh, you did. Okay, good. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's good.
All the time. Yeah.
Okay. So your department is probably doing a better job putting this up front.
Yeah, because a lot of it is like one of my teachers said that graduate school is the beginning of your career. So like we've been doing like networking and like talking to people that he knows and stuff like that, and just like talking to people like around here in community theaters and all that stuff. So
well, I can imagine, because I think for anyone who goes into theater, the question of how you're going to make a living with that in the future is very high on your minds, right?
Yeah.
It's not one of those no-brainers where parents say, "Oh, I wish you would take a job in theater because that's where the money is." Those conversations, this is one of the reasons why actually in career information is in the interest of promoting diversity, because if you come from a family that does not give you the resources to pursue your dreams, regardless of whether you will actually make money in the end, that limits a lot of students, right? So students whose working class parents are really hoping for more economic security for their children, they want to hear from their students, from their children, or from the departments that they're entering, that there is a future. And so your department is doing a good job there. How about you, Jorge?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Have you found your program's career resources?
Oh, yes.
Okay, good. All right. Okay. So I'm assuming there's a lot there.
Yeah, there is
Okay, good. All right. So then the next step is, have you found your professional organizations, the ones that are most likely to promote your careers in the future? Giselle, have you had a look at the AHA and OAH? I'm taking rounds again, Jorge. Sorry.
Yes, and I learned of them when you mentioned them last week in class.
Yes.
So yes, I have taken a look at them.
Jorge, you were going to say something?
Oh no, the next person can go. I can wait.
Okay. Listen, Alicia, since I have my son here, I need to quickly address an issue, and then I'll be right back with you, okay?
Okay.
All right. My son wanted to learn how to make an espresso, and I said that had to wait. Okay. Alicia, do you have, does your program have a professional organization affiliated with its purpose?
I would say USITT, which is what I just mentioned. They have job listings, and it's like a big organization for technical theater people. And they have like a conference every year. I think this year it's in March and in Baltimore. So and then we have a student chapter that we just started at Fullerton this semester. So so we can start networking and building relationships with surrounding Cal State schools that also have the student chapters. So I would say USITT. Yeah.
Good. So the next challenge for you is, hold on, where are we? Can you find your excuse me? Can you find your department's graduate program student learning outcomes? Hands up if you can. All right, Jorge, very good. When you read those outcomes, Jorge, does that sound familiar to you? Does that seem to mirror what you are learning?
Yeah, every class has this listed on the syllabus.
Okay, so it's repeated in the syllabus.
Every class, yeah.
But would you also say that that describes what you are actually learning? I mean, you know, to be familiar with the text and the language is one thing. To say that, yeah, this is actually happening, that's the other question.
Yes, I would say it is.
Okay, so it's up to you then to, you know, make that language your own and familiarize yourself. So if you were to apply for a job where education is not the obvious qualification needed, that you could make a pitch for what you bring to the table. And I'm assuming you're here because you are still looking at a wider range of what career opportunities exist for you, right? Otherwise you would be staying with the department resources and that's it. Alicia and Giselle, do you have any luck there?
I'm gonna be honest. They are in the graduate student office in the building on the wall, but I don't know where to find them on the any website. But they are up, and I have seen them. Have I read them? No. But
that's the far more common experience.
But I have seen them, and they are posted. So
yes, that's good. Good. Posted's always good.
Yeah.
It's like making copies of everything and then packing it away. Giselle, did you find ours?
I'm trying to find ours on our website on the MA program, but I keep getting a error message, a server error message.
Yeah. So they are not necessarily always here. Are you sharing my screen with me?
I can share my screen.
Are you am I sharing? Sorry, am I sharing my screen with you?
No.
Oh, okay. So let me quickly do this. You know what I just did? Because I was looking for them and I couldn't find them on our website, on our department website. And so I just Googled CSUF History Graduate Program Student Learning Outcomes. And that gets you straight to not our department, but the Division of Academic Affairs, Assessment and Institutional Effectiveness, which, you know, as the catchy name indicates, is something that everybody regularly should visit. And that's also probably where you can find your theater student learning outcomes. And so I'm going to go through this for history now, because that's the HSS department present here for the workshop, where it says students will synthesize a range of historiographical debates about a topic or event. Now, if you want to make this broader, Giselle, for job applications, you can say you can synthesize wide, you know, specialized debates about a topic or event. You know, if you can review historiography, there's a good chance that you can also get a handle on and get a grasp on other scholarly debates. Students will critically evaluate and apply methodologies and theories appropriate to the discipline. So you can think like an historian, you can practice what historians do. So the research that you do is specific historical research. You can find origins, you can find causes, you can find the who did what, when, where, and why. So that's a specific research skill that you learned in the History MA, and that's something you can pitch to wherever you go. Third learning outcome for history is students will design a research plan using historical methods and resources. So you can plan your research, you can conduct research, and you can discover historical evidence. That's of course, always important if you want to write a PhD thesis, but it's also useful, say, in politics for legislation, finding the origins and the history of legislation, of court cases, in the private sector, researching the history of, the marketing of particular products. All this is, involves often historical scholarship, historical research methods. They don't always realize that they need it, but when offered, they can quickly see the benefit of this. And it then goes on to the communication skills, but I already spoke about the strength of the building of narratives for history. So this is something that you should have compiled and ready to look at for you too, Alicia, as a reminder of what it is that you are supposed to know, what you are supposed to be able to do when you leave the program.
Okay.
Now, the next step, that's a more personal one for you. What are your particular primary research interests and your specialty? And what personal interests might you also have that you can combine with this? So this is something that you want to think about maybe for 5 minutes and maybe jot out. So I'm going to give you that time. You can ask me any questions if you have some. And I'm going to share my screen again so that you can see the prompt for this. And I apologize for this being not quite as lively an event as intended. You were supposed to be in a group with 3 other students and have a lively discussion on this specific to your department. Clearly that did not come to pass. If you have something and you want to talk about it, then please go ahead.
I think I have something.
Go ahead.
So I don't know if this is like super outside of my program. It's still creative, but I really like animation. And I would love to like do like I think lighting artist is a thing that you can do for animation. I think that would be cool. Or just like, being on set and lighting for movies. I would say it's still in my realm of like things, but like creative still, like it's not too far off putting. So yeah, that's me.
I think that's great. The idea of specializing on lighting in animation.
Yeah.
I think the first jobs may be that you can find in relation to that may not get you to the actual activity that you are dreaming of, but the interest, the passion, the background in theater absolutely allows for this. I know of a student who actually did medieval history and found himself in working in animation, not as a designer, not as an artist, but in doing background work for this. So absolutely, yeah. I think you're actually staying pretty solidly within your creative field. I think that's a completely plausible path. Any other ideas from you guys, Jorge or Giselle?
For me, I'm very interested in like women's history, and I would definitely working for personal for me, like working in organizations that work in the community so a lot of nonprofit work is interesting to me. So I'm definitely going to find a way to combine those two and look over your webinar.
Yes. People often think, well, I can't work in nonprofit because I need to get paid. Nonprofit pays, it just doesn't create a profit. So these are not organizations that accumulate wealth in order then to acquire and merge with another nonprofit and then become a big nonprofit kind of Google. That's what nonprofit doesn't do. But nonprofit completely hires people, pays their salaries, and also relies on professionals that need to be paid professional salaries. Otherwise, you don't get them to work for you. Now, it's a good chance that if you were to work for, say, National Organization of Women now, or Planned Parenthood, or any of those organizations, that they may pay a little less than comparative positions in the private sector. But if you're passionate about that cause, it is, if not a career, then certainly a really meaningful building block, a job and building block for a career, where you can then branch out and then either find jobs in the private sector. Let's say a company comes around and they really want to reform the way they handle their gender imbalance. And let's say maybe one of the Silicon tech companies finally figures out that they have a gender problem. And it's not just the men missing, it's also the men being present, having a gender problem. And how can you turn that around? Maybe someone with experience is who they're looking for. So those are the kind of things that then can come from the specialization that you have. Often it's hard to predict now what opportunities emerge 5 years from here. But if you specialize in what you care about and you build strengths in what you care about, these opportunities will come about, and you will research careers not just now upon graduation. You will research careers in 2, 3, 4, 5 years, in 10 years, maybe in 15 years. Again, you will research for new careers based on what you have done and what you know. And that's what lifetime learning means. So a nonprofit is a really good path, and especially for HSS folks. Anything for you, Roger? Anything that sort of connects to your own personal interest?
I'm sorry, I just came back from the bathroom. I didn't hear everything.
We are trying to figure out how our own personal interests and maybe also our research specializations allow us to specify specifically what we are good at.
Oh, well, my experience, I started off with political science in my undergraduate, and then I graduated, tried law school, and didn't dig it. So then I went on to teaching, and that's where I found my path. So I taught for 14 years, and I thought, I think I should get my graduate degree, and that's why I'm here.
So do you want to be in the classroom for the rest of your life, or do you want to be doing something else?
I'd rather be in the classroom. I know that teaching doesn't pay all that much, but I enjoy it.
Given how much experience you have and how you're now advancing your career, you should. How old are you, Jorge?
41.
41. You should think about what you want to do in maybe in 10 years from now, and maybe prepare for the ability to not just be directly in the classroom, but supervise those who handle classrooms and then go into school administration. Now, I know this is probably true in the K through 12, just as it is on campus. Teaching faculty always sort of look down or resent administration. It always seems like the administrators, they don't know what they're talking about. They're not down on the ground. They are not, face to face with the enemy. I mean, the students. So how can they possibly tell us what to do? Administrators often actually come from the ranks, and those tend to be the better ones. So since you already are a teacher and clearly are not desperately in search for a career, and you know exactly what you want to do, I thank you all the more for being here, since clearly this is not needed. But I also would like you to think a little bit more expansively about how you can grow from where you're at. If you don't want to grow from there and you think, I'm actually growing in the classroom, this is fine, and this is my lifetime passion, that's good. But go ahead.
I agree with you. I mean, there's lots of opportunities out there, and just because I want to be a teacher now, it doesn't mean I have to be a teacher forever.
Yeah. Now, the other thing that I should say, and I don't know whether this applies to you, Jorge, possibly not, since you're not in your 20s anymore. If you are independent, meaning you are not, you don't have dependents that tie you or connect you to a particular place. If you're able to move, that's always a big plus for finding the right job building blocks for your career. So Giselle or Alicia, if it happens to be that you are unattached and able to move to a new opportunity in Chicago or in Washington, D.C., you should recognize now that this is something that may not always be the case. So Jorge, are you unattached and able to move wherever you want?
Yeah, that's one of the things I like most about my teaching. Like I can travel around.
Okay. Well, once we connect with partners and marry, do those kind of things, often moving becomes much more difficult. So if you are able to move, you should recognize that this is not something that you will be able to do all through your life. You may, but you may also not, and you may find yourself, I don't know, fall in love, want to buy a house, and before you know it, a move across the country becomes really, really tricky. So use your mobility when you have it, and find those positions. So for you, Jorge, scouring the higher ed jobs website that I showed at the end of the presentation here, higher ed jobs and education jobs. There's plenty of websites for that. That's a good idea. I'm going to skip ahead a little because it's 10 o'clock, and a lot of this actually will be your independent work afterwards, where I'm hoping to hear back from you and you tell me you came across this great opportunity, this great connection with someone, and now you're all excited about your next step. I would love to hear this. Right now, though, I would also like you to think about how can you research your department's alumni. How would you go about this? Do you have any idea?
I would use LinkedIn, like maybe try to find them through there.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, history has a LinkedIn alumni community to which you are not yet invited because you are not an alumnus yet. Once you are an alumna, you can contact me. I'll make you part of the community, and there's about 150 people in there, not nearly as much as there are alumni. But nonetheless, it's a start. You can also, of course, do your own independent search of alumni in the LinkedIn search field. Who here doesn't have a LinkedIn account yet? Okay, so you all do. Okay, so it turns out that I'm kind of preaching to the choir here, to the people who are actually more engaged in their career searches, and the people who maybe need this advice are the ones who are not attending, and maybe they're watching. That would be great in the recording afterwards. Okay, so at this point, I am finished with what I have for you as guidelines for your work. Again, the workshop component here kind of came out a little thin. If you guys want to work in a group, you're welcome to, but I have a suspicion that with the 3 different colleges, that may not be a strong match. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stick around for another 10 minutes, and I'm going to hope that on your end you continue doing some of these searches and doing some of these sort of these tasks that are about defining what you are about, what interests you. And I'm happy to answer your questions. But I am going to stop talking now. If you want to leave, that's fine too. See, I'm still talking. But do me the favor and first complete the survey. I'm going to post the survey one more time in the chat, okay? And since I only have 3 participants, it would be really good if all 3 of you could complete that link, complete that survey.
Will do.
Okay, so I'll just stick around and see if we have any questions. And other than that, I would like you to, go through these steps in the handout. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Janssen, for your time. So I have identified my personal interests, and I like one of the things you said about like learning opportunities, looking for learning opportunities. So in my current work, it's very specified to like education and community education. So I am looking to work more like on the legislative side to hopefully, maybe, venture out to DC one day. So I'm looking for like internships that teach me that part, because I can use some of the skills like you mentioned, research really big. So I'm going to be looking for some of those opportunities, some internships, and I think I found two that are really interesting to me. So
in DC or in Sacramento?
So these are currently remote, but they are out of like DC.
Okay, meaning remote, you can do them from home?
Yes.
Oh, excellent. I mean, I guess that's good for now, right? I mean, as an internship, as a trial, or would you rather have an on-site internship?
No, it's okay as an internship for right now. Yeah, hopefully then that, because it would be throughout like the spring, so hopefully then that would eventually lead to an opportunity. But that works. I would like an inside internship, but for right now that works.
Now, for this remote internship, make sure that you get in touch with Rob McLean, Professor Rob McLean, our internship coordinator. What you have here is almost assuredly a new internship site for us, which is not a problem, but we just like to know about it so that you can get academic credit for it.
Okay.
It can also, if it's also paid, you can still get academic credit. That's not a problem for us. I would also say that what I know about you and the work you've done so far, on site, you can also possibly find paid positions that teach you as much as internships.
Okay.
Especially within your own organization, if there are positions available and you can move around towards headquarters, I think that's completely a viable path.
Perfect.
You seem to already know a little bit about what you do. So internships are good, but don't be too modest. You can also look for paid positions.
Very good. And I have caused a bit of a interest in our history in my organization, because they don't know the names of the people who founded like the first site. So no, I'm tasked with trying to find those.
Good. This seems like a strange parallel to draw. Giselle, do you want to say what you do, or do you want to rather not?
Yeah, I can. So I work for Planned Parenthood.
Yeah. I personally think it's something one should say proudly, but I understand why people have more reservations about it these days. I will say that, as odd as it may sound, I see parallels between your specialization and Eric Ortega, the example from the last workshop, to be a guy, because I think you can come to other offices of Planned Parenthood or similar organizations and bring an historical expertise, a background that delivers so much context to what they do, that they feel they really ought to have you there, because you can speak to sort of the historical narrative from Margaret Sanger to the present, get that story right in a way that others don't. I think that's a real asset that you bring that not everyone has.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's something that we always see out in the community, and even like with patients and sometimes people who are out there, I don't know, just looking at these health centers, they do bring up the history of Sanger, and they're like, how can you be involved in this as a person of color? So I think there is a struggle of how do we address this. So definitely they need a new perspective on that.
Yeah, very good. So I think actually with the three of you, I feel like you have pretty discernible futures ahead. Again, I feel like I'm preaching to the choir a little bit. Okay, well, thanks, Grizel. That was the result. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you for your time again. I appreciate it.
Okay. All right. Well, you guys can log out now if you like. If there's no other questions you have for me.
No, I don't. But I also want to say thank you for your time today. It was very informative.
Glad.
Learned a lot, and I put that in the survey. So
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor.
Bye. Take care, all.